The armored SUV rolled silently into the sprawling driveway of the mansion, its tires crunching on the gravel with a muted precision. The billionaire, still in his sharp, tailored suit from the long flight, felt the familiar mix of relief and exhaustion as he watched the familiar gates swing open. But just as he was about to step out, a faint, almost imperceptible sound caught his attention. It was a soft cry, almost swallowed by the wind, but unmistakably human. He froze, every instinct honed from decades of business negotiations and strategic thinking, now suddenly irrelevant in the face of a more personal urgency. The sound was coming from the backyard. A shiver ran down his spine. Without thinking, he stepped out of the SUV, his polished shoes barely making a sound against the stone pathway. His heart began to race, not from business, not from deals, not from negotiations, but from fear. He knew the sound, deep down, but what it heralded was unthinkable. As he approached the backyard, he saw a small figure kneeling on the ground, pressed against the fence, her tiny hands extended in a pleading gesture. The girl's voice, trembling and frail, barely carried across the air. "Please, just a little," she whispered, eyes wide and pleading. "I won't tell anyone." The father's chest tightened. He squinted against the sunlight, disbelief rooting him to the spot. His daughter, the little girl he had left a week ago with rosy cheeks and a sparkling smile, looked nothing like herself. Her body was frail, almost skeletal, her tiny limbs thin as sticks. Her designer dress hung loosely, drowning her tiny frame in its fabric. Her face was pale, cheeks hollow, eyes too large for the gaunt mask of what had once been a radiant child. Time seemed to slow. Every detail cut through him, the dirt-streaked clothes, the unkempt hair, the faint odor of neglect that hung in the air. This was not the daughter he had kissed goodbye, the one who had clung to him and laughed at his tired jokes before he left. This was a ghost, a shadow of the little girl he thought he knew. He dropped his briefcase, running the last few steps toward her. She tried to rise, her legs trembling violently under her weight, but collapsed almost immediately. His hands reached out instinctively, scooping her up into his arms. She weighed less than a 3-year-old, her frail body trembling against his chest. "Emma," he whispered, voice breaking, disbelief and horror tangled together. "My God, what happened to you?" The girl's lips quivered as tears streamed down her face, but her eyes held a mixture of fear and faint recognition. He held her closer, his mind racing as he tried to comprehend the scene. Questions collided with panic. Where had she been? Who could have let this happen? And most importantly, how could he have been so blind? In that moment, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only him and the fragile little girl clinging to his chest. His daughter looked like a ghost of the little girl he left a week ago. Every instinct told him he needed to act, but first, he had to understand. And yet, even as he stood there holding her trembling form, a cold, sinking feeling settled in his chest. Something terrible had been allowed to happen, and he was about to discover the full extent of it. Stay tuned to see how one shocking discovery will turn his life upside down. The father's arms tightened instinctively around his daughter, but even as he held her, he could see the full extent of the neglect. Her cheeks were hollowed, shadows etched into the soft curves that had once been the hallmark of her playful smile. Tiny ribs jutted sharply beneath her thin blouse, and her small hands clutched at his suit as if holding on for dear life. The designer dress she wore hung like a shroud, stained and wrinkled, far too large for her fragile frame. Dirt clung stubbornly to her skin, and the tang of neglect filled the air around them. He dropped to one knee to meet her eyes, searching for recognition, for any spark of the little girl he remembered. Her lips trembled and her voice was barely audible. "Please, don't tell her I ate the bread," she whispered. Each word was a dagger to his heart, and the disbelief threatened to overwhelm him. Beside them, the neighbor's maid, a woman in her 60s, stepped forward. Her face was etched with worry, her eyes red from crying. She held a small, battered lunchbox, the remnants of what had been left for the child. I tried to help," she stammered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I've been seeing her out here for days, begging for something to eat. I thought, maybe she just wanted attention at first. But today," she paused, voice cracking. "Today she collapsed. I couldn't watch her suffer like this." The father's mind raced. Shock, disbelief, and fury mingled in a storm inside him. How had this happened? How could someone he trusted so completely betray him, and more importantly, his daughter? His hands shook as he gently brushed her tangled hair from her pale forehead. "Emma, tell me what happened," he whispered, voice breaking. The little girl looked up at him, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and resignation. "Diana, she said I have to learn to go without food," she whispered. She said, "Fat kids are disgusting." She said no one likes kids who cry all the time. But I was hungry, Mommy, I was so hungry. Her voice faltered, a thin stream of tears rolling down her cheeks. The neighbor stepped closer, glancing nervously at the mansion in the distance. "I should have called you sooner," she said, her voice trembling. "But Diana, she told me not to bother you with childish nonsense. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't think—" The father's chest tightened further, pain and rage intertwining. 6 months ago, after the sudden death of his wife, he had thrown himself into work, trying to escape the grief that gnawed at him day and night. He had hired Diana with impeccable credentials, education degree, glowing references, child psychology specialization. $8,000 a month, total dedication promised. He had trusted her implicitly, believing that someone with such qualifications would nurture and protect his daughter. Now, holding Emma in his arms, he realized how wrong he had been. The signs had been there, small, easy to dismiss, but he had ignored them, lost in his own grief. Her recent video calls, in which she seemed distant and tired, had been excuses. The loose-fitting clothes, the faintly sunken eyes, everything explained away with a reassuring smile by Diana. He had wanted to believe it was nothing, because the truth was too painful to face. Emma's tiny voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "Mommy, please, can we eat something, anything? I promise I won't tell Diana." She pressed closer to him, her frail body trembling. The father's throat tightened. Anger and guilt swelled inside him, hot and raw. How could he have been so blind? How could someone he trusted so completely, someone charged with the care of his most precious treasure, let this happen? He glanced again at the neighbor, searching for answers, for any hint of what else might have been hidden behind closed doors. Her expression was grim, a silent confirmation of his worst fears. The questions roared inside him. Why did the nanny let this happen? And what else is she hiding? The father sat on the edge of the backyard step, still holding Emma in his arms, her frail body trembling against his chest. As he tried to steady his breathing, memories of the past 6 months surged back, each one sharper, more painful than the last. 6 months ago, life had been full but ordinary. The mansion had echoed with laughter, the smell of home-cooked breakfasts, and the warm chaos of family life. Then, in one devastating moment, everything had changed. His wife, the heart of their family, had died suddenly in a car accident. Marcus, Emma's mother, had been gone, and in that instant, his world collapsed. Grief became a relentless taskmaster. He buried himself in work, flying from one conference to another, negotiating deals with investors who barely glanced at him as a man, and instead measured his worth in numbers and outcomes. He was the billionaire CEO, the visionary, the negotiator, but he was also a widower, struggling to cope with a child whose heart was breaking silently. In the midst of that turmoil, he had sought help for Emma. Diana Montenegro had appeared flawless on paper. A degree in education, glowing references from wealthy families, and a certification in child psychology with a specialization in grief. She had promised unwavering dedication. "I lost my father at your daughter's age," she had said during the interview. "I'll care for Emma as if she were my own." Her credentials, her polished smile, and her calm assurances had lulled him into a false sense of security. He wanted to believe that Emma was in safe hands. He had to believe it, because facing the raw truth, the tiny child left behind in his grief-stricken house, was unbearable. But there had been subtle signs, little things he had brushed aside, too caught up in his own grief to notice the cracks. The video calls where Emma seemed distant, sleepy, or distracted. The loose-fitting clothes she wore during those calls, explained away as growth spurts by Diana. The quiet sobs he occasionally heard from the next room, dismissed as the whim of a child adjusting to new routines. Each sign alone might have seemed minor, but together they formed a pattern he had ignored. Excuses layered upon excuses. Reassurances meant to comfort his mind, but in truth masking neglect. Every time he rationalized her behavior, he unknowingly let a dangerous situation fester behind the walls of his own home. Now, holding Emma, he could see how deep the deception had run. The polished facade of Diana Montenegro, the trustworthy, educated nanny, was nothing more than that. A facade. The distance in her eyes during past visits, the subtle avoidance of personal questions, the carefully curated schedule that seemed designed more for control than care. These were all pieces of a puzzle he had failed to assemble until now. Regret coursed through him, thick and bitter. He had trusted blindly. He had assumed competence where there was cunning, and that assumption had placed his daughter in danger. As he looked down at Emma, brushing a strand of hair from her pale face, a chill ran through him. This was more than simple negligence. Something about Diana's calculated behavior, her precise excuses, and the disturbing way she had interacted with his child hinted at a deeper, darker truth. The father's jaw tightened, his mind already shifting from grief to determination. Diana Montenegro was not just a careless nanny. There was something else behind her perfectly constructed exterior. Something deliberate, something dangerous, and he knew, with a sinking certainty, that the full extent of her deception was yet to be revealed. The armored SUV rolled into the driveway once again. But this time the father was no longer exhausted from travel. Adrenaline surged, mixing with dread. Emma sat quietly in his arms, eyes wide, scanning the familiar walls that now seemed foreign and sinister. Something had gone terribly wrong, and he needed answers, fast. He stepped into the mansion, eyes darting around, noting the subtle changes in the rooms he had once considered safe. Every shadow felt heavier. Every quiet corner whispered secrets. The door to Emma's former bedroom was locked. A thin wire hook had been twisted to secure it from the outside. The smell hit him first, urine, mold, and despair. His stomach churned. He forced the door open. Inside, the room was wrecked. A crib, now old and stripped of its mattress, sat in the corner. Cardboard lined the bottom. On the floor, a small shoebox contained stale crumbs, Emma's hidden meals. Drawings lay scattered everywhere. One showed Emma holding her mother's hand beneath a huge yellow sun, crooked letters spelling, "Mommy, come back soon. I am strong. I can handle it." A small black dome caught his eye in the corner of the closet. He crouched, examining it, heart hammering. Hidden cameras. Emma had been watched, filmed, every moment of suffering, every desperate plea for help, hands shaking. He pulled his phone from his pocket and snapped photo after photo. Proof, evidence. Every recording would matter. At the hospital, the truth became physical. Blood tests and lab reports confirmed his worst fears. Sedatives were found in Emma's bloodstream, regular doses, not a one-time slip. Malnutrition charts showed a drop in weight that was alarming. 18 pounds lost in 6 months, nearly 40% of her ideal body weight. Vitamin deficiencies, sleep deprivation, chronic confinement. Each new statistic drove rage deeper into his chest. This wasn't neglect. It was calculated, methodical abuse. He scrolled through Diana's text messages, hands trembling. "Emma is very challenging, but I have her under control. She needs discipline to learn her place." Another message. "I'll handle it. These rich kids are weak. They exaggerate, but I know what's best." Every word dripped with arrogance, control, and malice. She didn't see herself as a caregiver. She saw herself as a master. Logs revealed frequent calls to unknown numbers at odd hours. Calls she made while Emma sobbed in another room. Voices spoke in a language he didn't understand. But the timing and secrecy told him everything he needed to know. Diana wasn't just negligent. She was orchestrating something bigger. The father reviewed timestamps and video from the cameras he had secretly activated in the mansion before confronting Diana. Strange men arrived, leaving shortly after Emma's cries subsided. Packages, small boxes, photographs taken from inside the home. Everything documented, every frame confirming the pattern. Close-ups of charts, lab results, and hospital documents showed a pattern of chronic abuse. Emma's weight had plummeted, her hydration levels were critical, and her tiny body showed marks consistent with prolonged confinement. Every graph, every report, every line of text screamed betrayal. He paused, holding Emma, watching her sleep fitfully under the hospital's IV lines. Rage, grief, and fear collided in his chest. How could he have missed this? How could someone he trusted so completely betray his daughter so cruelly? His mind raced. He needed to act. Every document, every camera angle, every recorded call would be weaponized. Scrolling through the nanny's hidden files, he realized Diana wasn't alone. A network, dozens of accomplices, multiple cities, systematic exploitation of wealthy families emerged before his eyes. The scale was horrifying, and Emma had been only one of her victims. He clenched his fists, anger and clarity merging. No longer just a father protecting his daughter, he now saw a predator network. And he had the resources, the intelligence, and the determination to dismantle it. Every shred of evidence would be collected. Every call, every camera, every shadow she hid in would be exposed. The father paced the office, Emma resting safely with a private nurse. His mind worked like a finely tuned engine, every detail of Diana's deceit now fuel for a meticulously planned trap. He would not simply confront her, he would expose her. Every hidden camera, every text, every recorded call would be a weapon in plain sight. By mid-afternoon, the house was prepared. Hidden cameras were installed in every corner, microphones discreetly placed. Police officers waited silently in adjacent rooms. CNN investigative journalist Jennifer Brooks had agreed to cover the operation live, documenting every second of the exposure. At exactly 3 p.m., Diana arrived, striding through the door with the confidence of someone accustomed to control. She wore a designer gown and a smug smile, her phone in hand, capturing the house as if it were her stage. "I've come to discuss my raise," she said, voice dripping with self-assurance. The father's expression was calm, controlled, but his eyes glimmered with lethal intent. "We will discuss that," he said smoothly. "But first, let's review your record. All of it." At that moment, the lights illuminated the large screen at the front of the room. Diana froze as previously hidden footage began to play. Videos showed her yelling at Emma, forcing medication into her mouth, and confining her in dark, cramped spaces. Her voice, recorded unguarded, called Emma a useless parasite, and described how rich kids are weak, easy to break. The room filled with tense silence. On the screen, multiple other victims' mothers appeared virtually, each ready to testify, each holding proof of Diana's crimes. Her composure crumbled. This is a misunderstanding," she stammered, the arrogance draining from her features. The father's voice cut through the panic. "Not a misunderstanding. You've documented every crime yourself. Every abusive act, every exploit, every violation is recorded. And now it will be witnessed by the world." Police officers moved forward as Detective Martinez presented his badge. "Veronica Salazar, formerly known as Diana Montenegro, you are under arrest for kidnapping, child abuse, conspiracy, fraud, and multiple other charges," he announced. Diana's scream echoed through the mansion. She struggled, but the law was precise, professional, and unyielding. Her network of 12 accomplices, identified through hidden documentation and financial trails, was simultaneously being apprehended across 7 states. Every detail meticulously planned, every consequence inevitable. Jennifer Brooks stepped toward the camera, her voice firm. "We are live from Beverly Hills with an exclusive report on a criminal network that preyed on children in wealthy households. The investigation has revealed systematic abuse, illegal filming, and trafficking of vulnerable minors. The ringleader has just been arrested." Diana's face, once confident and arrogant, turned ashen. Her phone slipped from her hand. Social media live feeds paused in mid-selfie. Every lie, every manipulation, every stolen moment was now public, broadcasted to millions. The father, standing beside Emma, felt a surge of relief and vindication. He had not only saved his daughter, but had dismantled a predator's empire. Justice was no longer abstract. It was immediate, visible, undeniable. As officers led Diana away, she shouted one last threat. "You'll pay for this!" "I have contacts, lawyers." Her words fell flat. Everything she thought would protect her had evaporated in the precision of his plan. He turned to Jennifer Brooks. "The network goes deeper than one woman. These victims deserve full exposure, and we'll make sure the world sees every link." Emma tugged gently at his hand. "Mommy?" she whispered. The father crouched, holding her close. Relief washed over him. The terror of the past months was finally over, at least for now. From the corner of the room, a phone vibrated. A message from a witness in the larger network. The battle might have started with Diana, but the war against those who preyed on innocent children was just beginning. The father looked out at the city lights of Beverly Hills, a sense of calm determination settling over him. Every contact, every ounce of influence, every resource would now be used to ensure this network was eradicated completely. The first victory had been won. The next phase had already begun. As Diana was escorted out in handcuffs, the father watched, his mind already moving forward. Victory over her felt monumental, but a nagging unease lingered, something about the precision of her operations, the resources she'd commanded, and the ease with which she manipulated high-profile families suggested a far larger scheme. His phone buzzed. A secure message from a former insider read, "The network isn't just Diana. There are others, officials, protectors, people who ensure the system shields them. Some have power you wouldn't imagine." He stared at the screen, jaw tightening. Diana had been meticulous, but she had also been a single node in a sprawling web of child exploitation. The documentation recovered from her devices revealed only a fraction of what was out there. Bank accounts, private communications, video sales. These led to other operators, other families, other children still vulnerable. He glanced at Emma, now sleeping safely in her room, and felt the weight of responsibility. Protecting her was only the first step. Now he needed to dismantle the entire network. Every lawyer, every official, every accomplice who had allowed Diana's crimes to flourish would be identified and held accountable. Pulling up the digital dossier, he saw a pattern: multiple cities, coordinated operations, a sophisticated hierarchy that had evaded law enforcement for years. The deeper he looked, the more he realized the challenge ahead. But his resolve hardened. This was no longer just personal vengeance. It was a mission for justice, for every child who had suffered. A video message from a whistleblower confirmed his fears. "They're organized," the woman said, voice trembling. "Some protectors are inside the government. They make sure families don't find out. But we've gathered evidence, and we need someone with resources to take them down." He leaned back, eyes narrowing. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. Every resource he possessed, every contact, every legal and technological tool would be deployed. Diana had been the opening strike. The real war was against the network she had served. The father looked at Emma, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Determination surged through him. No one will ever exploit another child under their watch. Not on his watch. Not on his watch ever again. The screen of his phone glowed with the incoming files from the whistleblower. Names, locations, accounts, all pieces of a puzzle he intended to solve completely. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was systematic, surgical justice. As the camera panned out from the mansion to the city below, a caption appeared in his mind. "The battle isn't over. The network is bigger, and justice will reach every corner where these predators hide." The father's eyes burned with focus. Every child rescued, every accomplice exposed, every official held accountable. It would all happen. And the world would witness it, step by step. Months passed, and the mansion, once shadowed by fear and betrayal, now echoed with laughter. Emma, once frail and frightened, had regained her strength. Her cheeks flushed with health, her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and her small hands clutched her mother's, or in this version, father's hand, with unshakable trust. Every day was a testament to recovery, love, and the power of protection. The father, once consumed by anger and guilt, now found a sense of purpose beyond vengeance. He rebuilt the family life they had nearly lost, establishing routines filled with care, play, and emotional connection. Simple moments, breakfasts together, bedtime stories, walks in the garden, became celebrations of survival. But he didn't stop there. The revelations of Diana's network had ignited a larger mission. With resources, influence, and first-hand insight, he launched a foundation dedicated to preventing child abuse among high-risk households. The organization connected families with verified caregivers, provided education on early warning signs, and developed apps to report suspicious activity safely and anonymously. The network Diana had commanded was dismantled. Law enforcement tracked down every accomplice. The whistleblower's information led to multiple prosecutions, and every child still in harm's way was rescued. Justice was served, not just in courtrooms, but in the lives of hundreds of children who could finally breathe freely. Sitting beside Emma during a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the foundation, he watched her smile, her confidence and joy reflecting the mission's success. Cameras flashed, but the moment felt intimate, personal, a celebration of triumph over darkness. Emma's hand squeezed his, a silent promise of hope and resilience. He turned to the camera, eyes steady, voice calm, but firm. If you want to see how I turned the deepest pain into protection for my daughter and countless others, make sure to subscribe. Every child deserves safety, and every act of courage, no matter how small, can change lives. Join us in this mission. The screen faded to the Foundation's logo, a symbol of hope and action. The story wasn't just about loss or revenge anymore. It was about empowerment, responsibility, and the tangible difference one determined person could make. And as the camera panned out over the city, it carried a clear message. Even in the darkest moments, justice, love, and protection can prevail. The battle may have begun with one child, but the mission to protect the innocent will continue, stronger, smarter, and unstoppable.